Welcome back. We're getting an early start around here on Monday morning like we always do. If you've been watching our videos, you've probably figured out that we're going to put out about one video each week and kind of give you the highlights of what went on that week and continue to show you what goes on behind the scenes, kind of what it takes to grow the crops that we do. So I'd appreciate it if y'all would subscribe to our channel. This week we're going to look at checking for freeze damage in our peaches and hooking up all the water lines in our plastic field and testing them out and showing you how we put out herbicide in between the plastic rows. Thank y'all for watching. You can see we're cutting peach middles right here with my cutter. You can see where the herbicide has worked over there under the trees where we sprayed it in the last video. You can see where it just left a grass strip. And this is what we'll just cut all year long with the cutter. You can see that some of the trees are blooming a little bit more than they were the last time we showed you. I think the cold weather that we've had has slowed down the blooming process. If it had stayed warmer like it was, I think they would have bloomed a little more evenly. That's just my opinion. 18th, 19th, 20th of March, we got to freezing and a little bit below, which certainly made me a little bit nervous on the peaches. I think we're okay, but we're fixing to get out and look at some flowers, and I'm going to show you what it looks like inside of a peach bloom and what you're looking for as far as freeze damage goes. All right, this is the inside of a peach flower. You can see that little green ball there on the bottom. That will eventually be the peach. And so you can tell that it's green and not dead. There's another view. The little green ball down at the bottom, that's the ovary part of the flower. The female part, it would be brown or black, that whole stem right above it right there, if it was freeze damaged. That whole part right there is called the pistil. You can see these buds right here that have not opened up yet. They will take temperatures colder than an open bloom will for obvious reasons. They're sealed up and more insulated. So we still have a lot of blooms at this stage or even earlier. So it would have to get really cold to kill a bud like this for this time of the year. All right, this is a good example of the herbicide. Again, we showed you while we were on the tractor a while ago, but you know, this is where we sprayed with our hood and all. We showed you that on the last video, and then the peach dolly up here on the bed where the trees are, and then the grass strip that we left. So that's a good view of it right there. I've looked around a pretty good bit and opened up a bunch of flowers, and I can't tell that we've had any damage from the freeze, which we're very fortunate and blessed on that. 28 degrees is kind of the magic number on the threshold, kind of when you're going to get damage and when you're not. I don't think it got that cold. Of course, it could certainly be a degree or two different than what, you know, the thermometer said it got to, but I think we got down to 29 or 30 for a couple of mornings. So I feel pretty good that we've escaped any kind of freeze damage for now. According to all the research that I've read and people that I've talked to, you'll lose about 10% of your peach blooms if it hits 28 degrees for 30 minutes. Well, this weather we had this past weekend, you know, it got cold, freezing, and a little bit below, probably from 5 to 8 a.m. maybe, 2 or 3 mornings in a row. Well, I don't know that it got to 28 And if it did, it wasn't 28 that whole time. So I think we're okay. Now, if you get a night where you're freezing at 10 p.m. or midnight and it gets cold below that all night long, that's a different story. But we didn't have that. And with peaches, you can always lose some blooms and still be okay, because remember, we still have to thin them. All right, it's time to start hooking up our water lines in our plastic field. That's what we're doing now. It's going to take us several days. I'll show you a little bit now, and then I'll probably wait until we get through and kind of explain it all, and it'll make a little more sense when you see it. All right, it's so windy, I had to come sit in my truck so you could hear me better, but I'm still going to show you a little bit right now. This is the middle of the plastic field. Our rows are too long to splice in on the end of the rows and run the water all the way down. So we come in the middle and we're going to splice in. We've made a mark all the way across there, you can see. So the water will go this way and then it'll come this way. You don't want to go over 700 feet on a run. So we got to make sure that it's less than 700 feet, a little bit less each direction. That'll give the water a chance to pressure up and the drip tape to pressure up and drip like it's supposed to, and make an even distribution with the water. So that's why we do that. I'm going to come back and show you when we get through all the water lines. We divide it into 3 zones because it's too big to water all at one time. So I'll show you that and show you all the little connections and how we do it once we get through. Okay, what you're looking at right here is we have 3 3-inch blue lay flat running from our valves right here down to the elbows, and this will go across the field right here. Those are our 3 zones. So every time we turn on zone 1, then one of those lines will fill up and go to zone 1. Back here, I'll show you this later. This is our 3 electronic valves, and they are wired into our control panel there at our well, and all that's on a timer. This is what we've laid out so far. I'll probably wait till we get through when the wind's not blowing too bad, and I'll show you the rest. It's March 25th, and I'm going to give you a little update on the transplants in the greenhouse and show you what they look like. All right, these are our tomato plants. These are some extra tomato plants that we've planted a couple of weeks behind those, just to have some extras in case we need to replant. Watermelon transplants, cantaloupe transplants, here's some of the eggplant and the peppers. Back here is our yellow watermelon. The variety on the yellow is the 4456. It's just a number. They're coming up. You can see that one right there is cracking through. This is going to be our second round of tomatoes that we just planted yesterday on the heating table. Here's a closer up view of the cantaloupes. And the watermelons. Tomatoes here are all getting close to being on the right size. We'll probably move the plants out sometime during the week, next week, and let them harden up. That's kind of a normal process. You don't really want to take them out of the greenhouse and put them straight in the field. So we'll do that for a couple of reasons. We don't want to let them get too big, and we like to harden them up for a little bit. So we're on schedule, probably start planting the last couple of days of March or the first couple of days of April. All right, it's been a couple of days later, and we've got through with the water lines on the plastic field. We've got everything tested and pressured up and flushed out and all that. So I'm fixing to turn the water on and show you how it works and how we've laid it out. All right, this is my water well set up here. We've got a small well, about 90 gallons a minute, and all it does is feed the plastic field. Right here is my sand separator that catches all the sand. We flush it out manually just every so often. And this little injector pump right here takes a solution out of this barrel and pumps it through the water before it gets to the filter over here. And what it's doing is it's taking the iron out of the water. You don't want the little iron particles to plug up the little emitters in the drip tape. So we have to have the sand separator to take out the little particles, and we have to have this injector pump pumping the solution through ahead of the filter right there, and the filter will catch everything that we miss, because it doesn't take a big particle to plug up one of those emitters in the drip tape. Right here is the way I fertilize and inject fertilizer through my drip tape and any insecticide that we want to inject in. It's got a pump right there under that bucket, a booster pump. We'll show you how that works later whenever we get ready to use it. All right, you can hear the little injector pump running right now. We've got the water on. 3-inch lay flat, going down to 3 valves right here. We showed you this earlier. These are electronic valves under that bucket we've got there as a protectant. It's going to 3 different zones. So right now I've got zone 1 turned on. You can see right there the line is full of water. A lot of pressure on these lines, on these blue lay flat hoses and this black hoses that we use down here. Here's our elbows. This right here is 1.5 inch black oval hose. It's got a stripe on it on one side that keeps you from getting it twisted when you lay it out, lay the stripe up. Drip tape right here. Remember I told you we sliced it in the middle of the field, and then we came through with these connections here, spliced it into the black oval hose, and then these things screw on to the drip tape, keep them tight. You can't tell here, but this is very hard from water pressure. This is very hard. I mean, I can't even bend it with my finger. So it's a lot of pressure on these lines, but that's how they work. You want them pressured up good so they will drip. This one right here is going to zone 1. Zone 2 will carry the main line on this lay flat out until zone 2 starts, and then we'll tie it into this same black hose. Same way with zone number 3. It'll go all the way across and then tie back into a hose like this. We have to have a hose like this to tie into the drip tape. And they call it lay flat hose because it's flat. You know, when there's no water in it, it lays flat and you can drive over it. And you can drive over it also when the water's on. Those 3 electronic valves right there are tied into the control box right here, and that's what controls everything. We have everything on a timer. We can set zone 1 for so many minutes, and then zone 2, zone 3, any time of the day, any type of schedule. It's a pressure gauge right here on the downside of the filter. Once we get everything full, we know how many pounds of PSI is on each zone, and that way we can kind of monitor if everything's working. I've got a red light right here. Every time the water's on, the light's on. We put a bucket around it so you can see it better in the daylight, but I can see it all the way from the blacktop road if I'm driving by. I've also got a camera where I can monitor this light remotely from my phone from when I'm not here. And it just allows us to know that the water's on. If we know the schedule, we know when it's supposed to be on and when it's supposed to be off. All right, remember we told you how we left a piece of drip tape sticking out of the end of every row? You can see the water's dripping right there. So we can walk by or drive by when the water's on and know that every row is doing what it's supposed to be doing. All we have left to do now is just pre-water our beds. Make sure there's plenty of moisture, which there should be, but we always like to water them good anyway, and then start planting. So we've got everything out here ready to go. All right, I'm showing you now what we used to put out herbicide in between the plastic rows. This is a hood here that we built. Same principle as the hood that we had on the peaches, but it's a different rig. And you can tell that we made it fit to go right down between the plastic rows. It's 100 inches wide. It's got 5 nozzles inside those hoods right there. And we've got the skirting underneath. It rides right on the ground. And it runs off of an electric pump. The electric pump is mounted under this jug right here. We keep it kind of to protect it over the top. Got my pressure gauge and all that, which I can see from my cab. I got the switch right here running up to the cab that I can turn it on and off. All right, I'm watching that pressure gauge. It's right at 20 psi. I can tell if it's working or not by watching that gauge. You can tell it fits right down between the middle. We use this hood a lot, and we use it between the plastic rows, and then on my late watermelons and cantaloupes that we don't plant on plastic, we use it for that also, and you'll be able to see that later on. It's a pretty handy little rig because, you know, we're putting out the herbicide exactly between the rows, and we don't have to worry about the drift. Right now we don't have anything planted, but when we do have stuff planted, of course it's important to make sure that chemical doesn't get out, because it will sure burn those little plants if it does. Right now we're putting out halo sulfuron, which is a pretty common chemical. You may have used it in your yard or whatever. It's real good on nutsedge. Nutsedge is very hard to kill, and we've got some of it coming up early here between the plastic, so that's what we're doing now. Halo sulfuron is the chemical name, but the trade name is a lot of different trade names. It could be Halo Max, Sandia, Permit, and a bunch of other different things. So another thing that I haven't really mentioned is anytime we're spraying anything, all that has to be calibrated, and I'm assuming most people know that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You know, you don't just throw your chemicals in the tank and take off and go. So all of our different sprayers that we use, we've got a lot of different ones. You know, spraying the peaches, we've got a special sprayer for the tomatoes, our hood for this, our hood for the peaches, our big boom, small boom, all that has to be calibrated. So you have to know your ground speed, your volume you're putting out, your pressure, all that. It's all on a per acre basis. So you have to figure all that out. So farming takes a lot of math, because I'm always using math. But I just wanted to mention that. I didn't know if most people knew that or not. We'll do a couple of applications of herbicide in between the plastic, and then we'll do some cultivation also. But you know, once the vines start running off the plastic with the watermelons and cantaloupes, then you can't do anything else. You know, the crops like tomatoes and peppers, you can keep doing that all year long because they don't really get off of the plastic. So we do all that we can, you know, before the vines start running off, and then after that, you can't do anything except for hoe it or let it go. So that's why we try to keep it as clean as possible up until that point. Nutsedge is one of those weeds that is a nightmare to control. It's little tubers underneath, little nuts under the ground that anytime you do any tillage, a lot of times you're just spreading that around, which that's kind of with any weed, but for whatever reason, nutsedge is pretty tough. This chemical we're putting out, it works, but you know, later in the year when we get some more coming up, you can't really do a whole lot about it. If we were spraying over the top with some chemicals like they do in cotton and corn and soybeans, we wouldn't have much of an issue. But nutsedge is pretty tough. It'll also come up through the plastic. It's probably the only weed that will do that. And so anytime we get some coming up through the plastic, we have to pull it. But that's kind of the battle that we have going on with that. You know, weeds are a problem all the time, but nutsedge is kind of one of the ones that are harder to control. You know, farming is expensive. I don't know how many people really think about that, and it doesn't matter what kind of farming you're doing, it's all expensive. But if you just think about this field right here and the videos that we've showed you over the last month and all the things we've done in this field, and we haven't even planted anything yet. So it's a lot of upfront cost and just a lot to do to get it ready and to do it the right way. And you know, if you're going to do it, you don't want to skimp on anything because you want to make sure you get the best crop you can. So just wanted to throw that in there for the non-farmers that are watching out there. That's going to wrap it up this week for the video. We got through what we were doing. When we get to the last few days of March, if we've got a good forecast, then we're going to start planting. So I hope on the next video you'll get to see that and go from there. See y'all next time.